Not sick, not sick. Not sponsored by Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So let's get a few things out of the way. First of all, I know I probably look like a thug, or, you know, like an a-hole with the hat. I have bad hair. Actually, it's a lie. I just got a haircut. Like, you're supposed to put, like, not modeling clay, hair clay? You're supposed to put something in your hair to, like, make it look good and sleek, but I don't have that product at the moment. But I think it looks good, but most of the time my hair is bad, so me with this hat on that I've been wearing since high school. Second, before we even dive into editing videos, just want to make it very, very clear what I'm using to edit and what I'm using to edit. Start off, I use Adobe products mostly to edit, though I might use Advid in the very near future. At the moment, I mostly use Adobe Premiere 2018 2019 to edit. I'm trying to work on the gap between them in that I can't afford 2019 yet. But there will be some times I may do Pro Tools. I hate Pro Tools. Also DaVinci. DaVinci too. DaVinci for color correction. What I mean by what I use to edit and what I used to edit, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. I use a Windows PC device, but I also have a bunch of parts in there. And this video is to clarify that I just don't use an HP $120 computer from Staples. We're just going to go through the parts of what's in this beautiful, okay, let's be real, ugly looking computer down here that looks like the new future Xbox. Alright, to start, we're going to start off with the motherboard. It's an MSI X99A SLI Plus. I've had some issues with this motherboard, but for the most part, it's pretty decent, I think. It has a lot of USB ports, which I love for external storage purposes. But with a motherboard, you need a CPU, and these are the most two important parts, supposedly. So I have figured it'd be on this piece of paper. 'Tis not. You're gonna have to bear with me that my address is on the front of this, because the first CPU I got just didn't work. Intel i7-5820K at 3.3 gigahertz. I can never remember the CPU at the top of my head. 6 cores. I was talking to people that knew PC stuff, but I guess pretty much what it comes down to is like 4 cores is like for gaming and 8 cores is for editing. And I wanted something in between both gaming and editing, so 6 was in the middle. Not sure that's how it really works. Let's get the next big piece out of the way. GTX 970, MSI obviously, but GTX 970, 4 gigabytes. And honestly, I'm surprised. I love this graphics card with a passion, but for only having 4 gigabytes, it still, I think, does a really fast, decent job at rendering like graphics and effects in Adobe. There's no issue with it. It doesn't really like lag a lot. I mean, it'll lag a lot when you put a butt ton of effects on something, but when you do put a good bit on, there is no lagging when it comes to like rendering it. After that, we have some RAM. This is, I got HyperX Fury DDR4, and originally I got 2193 because that was cheap. It was slow, and I really didn't know it was that slow, but now I have 2666, and my goodness, the difference is actually very, very noticeable. I'd like to get 3200, which is what the motherboard can actually support, but 2666 from like 2193, I think it's 2193. Big difference, and before I had 16 gigabytes, and now I upgraded to 32. Now my favorite part, the storage devices. Boy, oh boy. First starting off, I had a, bear with me, it's just a 2 terabyte Seagate. Got it in 2015 or 26, I think it was the beginning of 2016. So it's coming upon its 4 years, and yes, it worries me when it makes a bunch of scary sounds. And then I first started off with a SanDisk Ultra 2 SSD, 480 gigabytes. But then, because Windows love to crash a lot, and I want to say it's this. I want to say it's this SSD that caused it to crash so much for whatever reason. I then got, because I was tired of reinstalling Adobe, I got a Kingston 120 gigabyte SSD, and that's where I had my Adobe living on and all those products. I will say this, Kingston SSDs, they may be a little bit slower, like even slower than the Ultra 2 like SanDisk, but I have one on my computer. I put one on my girlfriend's computer. I put one on my family's computer. They all have Windows running on it, not mine, of course. But never had an issue with it. Never crashed randomly. Never just it's honestly the most quality, I think, SSD wise. But then if you did research real quick on my motherboard, you found out, whoa, you have an M.2 drive. So I recently bought an M.2 Samsung 970 EVO. And, I will say, I never thought there would be a difference I knew there was a difference, I should say, from editing on a HDD and an SSD, just putting media in and moving it around and rendering it. But I never realized how much of a speed difference from an SSD SATA to SSD M2, how different the speed in that would be. That was impressive, and this is probably one of my new favorite things I just put in my computer not too long ago. I love this, and honestly I wish I would have got 1 terabyte, but I can only afford 500. Oh yeah. The case is I completely forgot about the ugly case. Nobody cares about the case. It's ugly, I know. The only lights are at the top for the fan control. But if you're wondering, it's a Next, or NZXT, I call it Next, Phantom. And this case, I love it for the reason of, I know it's ugly, but the amount of fan controls it has just built in at the top, it's nice. I recently just added a fan. In fact, I recently just added this Noctowl, I can't pronounce things right. If you've seen this, there's like an owl on it. I recently just bought a 140 millimeter fan to put up front, to have better airflow through the front and then, out the back because there's just nothing there. But yeah, there's, I think, up to 7 fans. There's 2 small ones down below, a big one on the side, 2 big ones up top, an exhaust in the back, and you put one up front too. And it's honestly the nicest thing I've had, especially when I have a butt ton of storage devices going at the same time. You're probably wondering what's powering all this, and I got a EVGA Next 750. Never had any issues with the power supply, never had any issues with EVGA. Everybody I know has like an EVGA power supply. Oh yes, the CPU fan. Oh boy, this is something I will remember. This Hyper 212 EVO Cooler Master CPU fan is like the best CPU fan I've ever seen, I've ever used. If you own one of these, you probably understand why installing this is the biggest pain in the butt. Ask anybody, I swear. I love this fan. It does a fantastic job for fan cooling a CPU. But this is, I swear, the hardest thing to put in the computer. Anything else I can do fine. This is one thing I struggle with doing every single time. I just change the thermal paste and whatnot, and it literally 45 minutes to put this fan back on. And I know the computer. I mean, just because Jordan and I didn't know what we were doing like 2 or 3, 4 years ago, I know what I'm doing now, and I have a bigger case too. Doing it on my girlfriend's computer was not fun. But I will say, this fan does an awesome job at doing its CPU cooling job. But putting this fan in, it just... And now comes the wonderful Wi-Fi series. So first I started off with an Asus dual band wireless AC130. It's not an AC130. AC1300 USB Wi-Fi adapter. And this is going to sound really bad, but with the Wi-Fi connection I got, I think 25 to 35 megabits per second or whatever. Which wasn't bad with Wi-Fi. I now have Ethernet cable. Anywho, the one thing I didn't like about this is it didn't have Bluetooth. So I recently got another Asus PC AC55BT Wi-Fi adapter, and it's actually slower, very much slower. I think I only get like 15 to 20 megabits per second. If you see this thing down here, it says Bluetooth. That's very nice to have. I can use so many things that I couldn't use before, like headsets, speakers, and whatnot. So that's why I got the slower one, but it had Bluetooth. So Bluetooth 4.2. So it's not Bluetooth 5.0, but 4.2, and that was like 15 bucks on Amazon, totally worth it. When it comes to card adapters, they tend to be a lot slower to transfer media on, like SD cards, like when I'm done with this. I bought a Next Aperture M internal card reader, which I love very much. It only has 2 USB 3.0 ports up front, but that's fine. Using an adapter, for whatever reason, on a 3.0 port, like a 3.0 adapter and a 3.0 port, I'd only get like 30 megabits per second. With this, I get 40. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're transferring a bunch of files, it's nice to have. And then finally, editing wise, I have 2 headsets. Ooh man, look at me, I'm flexing. I'm not flexing. This is my new headset that Antonio got for me from Best Buy. And this is like the Sony MDR XB950N1, whatever. If you're wondering why he got this for me, this was like the display one that a lot of people use, and I guess Best Buy like cleaned it up and they had to throw away the ear muffs. But he gave it to me and I just had to buy earmuffs and a cable, and they were mine. I think it does an awesome job at what it does. It has noise canceling, got bass effect. You can, flip through songs or whatnot, change the volume. But I will say, maybe you can see it on the desk. You could probably totally see it on the desk. The speaker quality is good, but I will say, when it comes to best speaker quality, the Astro A10s, my goodness, the speaker quality is fantastic in these. I think they use the same speakers as the A50s and the A40s and whatnot, but the speakers in the A10s, like editing-wise, it is the nicest thing to use. It's the nicest thing I've ever used. The funny thing is these were, I think, like $50, $60, while this Sony headset, I think, is like, it was like $250. Maybe it's like $200, $150 now. But even though these are cheaper, they look like a gaming headset. The editing with these it's honestly the best. You have a good headset for editing when you can hear enemy footsteps across the map. That's what you should be looking for, not Beats, because they're expensive and like $400. Don't edit with Beats. But yeah, this is pretty much just like an introduction to, before I even dive into editing, what I'm editing with, and what's in my computer. I should also mention that the monitor right here, that is Antonio's old monitor that he gave me. That's 1920 1080. And this is my monitor that is also 1920 1080. I would like to have a 4K monitor to do 4K footage, but it's not in the budget right now. Thanks for watching, and when we come back, we'll do more editing stuff, camera stuff. Post-production and camera stuff is what we'll do next time. Something like that. Maybe with Antonio. By the way, big thanks to Antonio for literally half the stuff I'm using right now is his. The lights, the camera. See you next time when we do some post work. Or camera work. I should also mention, while putting all this stuff away, that I didn't buy all this stuff at once. Some people can. I'm not one of those people. I've literally been building this since 2015. Had issues starting it in 2016. And I think I finally got it running in 2017. So I think my computer's still somewhat decently expensive. I'm not going to say it's super expensive. This wasn't just a miracle that happened, that I one day woke up and had a really decent, nice PC. It was some time and money.